Hello and welcome back, it's ShriKe here with another D&D video. Dungeons and Dragons is an amazing hobby with hundreds of people around the world playing it every single week, so it makes complete sense why you might want to get into it now. So in this video I will be talking you through everything you need to know to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I am going to break this video into two sections, the first of which is the players, how to find them, how many you need and what their different roles are. And then the second section will be about the equipment you actually need to start playing, including the rules. Before we get on with that, if you want to see more D&D tips, tricks, tutorials, first looks and much more content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and then tap the notification bell next to it so you get notified when I upload another video. So to play Dungeons and Dragons, the very first thing you will need is players. You can play Dungeons and Dragons with 2 people, up to 10 people is probably the maximum you'd ever want to play with, but the ideal, in my opinion, is between 4 and 6 people. There are quite a few ways you can find players, but the very first way that I would suggest is simply asking your friends and family. Even if they have never expressed any interest in playing in Dungeons and Dragons, ask them anyway because you never know what their response will be. You might be surprised, they might be willing to give it a go, or they might have wanted to play the whole time and just never mentioned it. If that doesn't work for you, the next way I would suggest trying to find players is by going to your local nerd establishment. I'm not sure if nerd establishment is the right word, but I'm going to go with it. By that I mean your local board game cafe, comic book shop, model store, places like that where you know an interest in Dungeons and Dragons is probably relational. I have a board game cafe near me and every Wednesday night they do a Dungeons and Dragons night where loads of people come together and play different games of Dungeons and Dragons. So if you have one near you, make sure to get in contact with them because they might do the same. If that also does not work for you, then the final way is to look online. There are absolutely tons of Facebook groups and Discord channels of people looking to find other players to go and play D&D with. With a simple search you should be able to find them. The first two options of asking your friends and family or your local nerd establishment will probably end up with a game that is played in person, but you can also play Dungeons and Dragons online. I've already made a video talking through some ways you can play Dungeons and Dragons online, which I'll put up in the card up here or down in the description if you're interested. So now that you have a group of players who all want to play Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to have to split it into your different roles. All I mean by that is that one of you have to become a Dungeon Master and then the rest of you will play characters. The Dungeon Master is in charge of weaving a story and presenting scenarios for the players to describe what their characters would do in that situation. I will be putting together a video which will go into much more depth about what Dungeons and Dragons is and how it plays, so if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe. If you're viewing this from the future, that video might already exist, so I'll put it up in the card here or down in the description. So now you have your group, one of you has opted to be the Dungeon Master, you have to decide what type of Dungeons and Dragons game you would like to play. There are 2 ways to play Dungeons and Dragons. The first is buying a module or a campaign and playing through that, and then the second way is what we call homebrewing it. The modules or campaigns are bought books that you can read and then play through. They will hold your hands a lot more while you're playing and are definitely better for new Dungeon Masters. If you're going to get one, Lost Mines of Vandelver was created specifically for new players, so I would definitely suggest you start there. Homebrew games don't have a book or anything like that and are completely created by the Dungeon Master. So the Dungeon Master will build the story and the game as they go along, but they won't actually be reading it from a book. They can get inspiration from films or from games or from books, but they're not actually reading a book and playing it as they are told to play it. Generally this is harder to do if you're new to D&D, but this is actually how I started, so you can definitely do it, and if this has more appeal for you, then go for it. But do know that if you want to do it this way, you will need to put in much more effort. So now you have your players, you've decided what sort of game you want to play, so let's actually talk about what you need to play. Really, all you need is a set of dice, some basic rules, and if you're playing a character, you'll need a character sheet. If you're playing online, you don't even need the dice because most of the online tools have a dice roller built into it. These are the minimum I would say that you need to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. It is one of those hobbies where you can end up spending a lot of money and getting loads more stuff, but do not worry about that at the moment. All you need are those 3 things. To get the basic rules, all you actually have to do is go to the Dungeons and Dragons website and they give them to you for free. I'll put a link to that down in the description so you can find it nice and easy, and that does include a character sheet. Now that you have these 3 things, the next thing to do is to read the rules. You don't need to memorise every single rule for session 1. As you play it more, you will understand the rules more and they will stick in your head better. But make sure to read over them once just so that you do understand how the game is played. I do think that the rules are one of the most daunting parts of starting Dungeons & Dragons because you see that there are books released all the time, but do not worry about them at all. Just get the basic rules, play with them, and you will still have fun. And then later on, when you're a bit more experienced with Dungeons & Dragons, you've been playing for a little while, you can get some of these books and you can introduce more rules and more character options into your game. This is a good point to talk about the starter set. This is a box that the people over at Dungeons & Dragons have put together so that you can start playing straight away. In it there are the dice and the basic rules. There's also the Lost Mines of Fandelver module that I was speaking about earlier, and there are pre-made characters, so you don't even have to worry about making your own character. If you have the money, I would definitely say this is the perfect place to start. It will set you up perfectly for the rest of your D&D career. That is pretty much it. You have your players, you've decided which one of you will be the Dungeon Master, you've decided what type of game you will play, you have the equipment. All you have to do now is schedule a time and date to start playing. The most important part of all of it is that you are having fun. It does not matter if on the first session you make loads of mistakes and you forget loads of rules, as long as everyone at the table is having a fun time. There's not a single person whose first session went perfectly, so don't try to strive to be these new D&D celebrities that you see online, and just start playing. If you found this useful, please give this video a like, and welcome to the D&D community. There'll be loads more content like this on the channel, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see more tips, tricks, tutorials, reviews, first looks, stuff like that all around Dungeons & Dragons. And until next time, happy gaming!